Magandang umaga po sa mga kababayan sa Pilipinas at magandang gabi naman sa mga nasa North America at sa mga kababayan na nasa ibang bahagi ng mundo, magandang bati po sa inyong lahat. Ako po ay si Victoria Grajeda Smith, ang inyong kapatid sa Estados Unidos na ang puso ay palaging nasa mahal nating inang bayan. Ako po ay isang proud na scholar ng bayan, UP Government Scholar at magna cum laude graduate in Political Science from the UP Diliman College of Arts and Sciences, Justice Alex Reyes Scholar, Dean's Medal for Academic Excellence awardee, and top 10 graduate ng UP College of Law. Meron po rin akong Master of Laws degree from the University of Michigan School of Law. I am the founder of the new nonprofit organization called Punla, short for Pagbabago ng Lipunang Pilipinas sa pamamagitan ng pagbabago ng Pilipino. In English, the Tagalog word means seedling, a perfect metaphor symbolic of the seed of true social change we want to help plant in Philippine society. Punla is an independent, nonprofit, non-sectarian, and secular organization committed to the mission of helping transform Philippine society through the transformation of the Filipino by education, raising awareness, and changing consciousness toward the individual Filipino's highest self and the greatest good of the Filipino nation. We chose this long and difficult path towards promoting social change through education in our motherland because I believe no authentic social change could come with instant or even band-aid remedies. At the current state the Philippines and its people are in now, resorting to speedy solutions without addressing the structural roots of systemic Philippine problems and without transforming the Filipino will only result in generating the same problems in which the Philippines and Filipinos find themselves. It's a vicious loop. It's about time to be serious about overhauling Philippine politics and its corrupted culture by beginning the process within ourselves. Nothing less will do. The re-education of the miseducated Filipino is but the start. Yet, as the wise saying goes, 1,000-mile journey begins with the first step. This is our baby step to help our people achieve revolutionary transformation through education. Punla is not affiliated with any political party. We are only affiliated with the truth. Toward this end, we strongly support the movement for transparent and honest elections and true democracy in the Philippines. This is why we also necessarily support the TN Trio's mandamus petition before the Philippine Supreme Court to compel the COMELEC to produce certain documents in its possession and control called the transmission logs, which, as we will explain later, will further substantiate our conclusion that there was, in fact, a systemic rigging of the Philippine elections that favored the Marcos Duterte ticket. None of us are running or, as far as I know, intend to run for public office. And none of us are doing this to be popular or powerful. Why? Because to speak truth to power, one must be uncompromising, which inevitably places us at odds with many people, even among our own friends. If anyone is interested in helping Punla's mission, please contact me through a direct message or private message on Facebook. We're going to need all the help we could get. In this presentation, please note that by no means should our description of the anomalies during the May 9, 2022 Philippine elections be taken as exhaustive or exclusive, for these are only what we know of today. For simplicity and due to time limitations, we purposely limited the anomalies we will discuss only to those relevant to the systemic rigging of the Philippine elections as they relate to information technology. Please bear with me as I go through the initial slides. If they don't immediately strike you as connected with the systematic rigging of the elections, we will connect the dots in the end. Moreover, please understand that our aim is not to give you absolute proof beyond reasonable doubt, but a combination of proofs that, taken together, amount, in my opinion, to more than a preponderance of evidence of systematic rigging of the 2022 Philippine elections. Whether this constitutes proof beyond reasonable doubt is for you, the Filipino people, to decide. We developed this presentation based on a close collaboration and consultations with Brigadier General Eliseo Rio Jr. Thus, we thank you, Sir Eli, for your generous sharing of your knowledge and time with us. Sir Eli is with us tonight. We're so lucky. We also tapped into various research materials, including news articles, recognizing how difficult it may be for a non-technology person to understand the complexities of the technology and technical terms involved in describing the electoral fraud. We simplified the issue to its basics. As much as I could manage it, I reduced the use of technology terms to the minimum in order to avoid cluttering our minds with technical words to describe the information technology processes involved. Yet, there is only so much simplification one can do before it becomes an oversimplification that misses the essential points or elements of the issue or problem. Nuance is an important element when one seeks the truth. As our UP law professors told us, the law is neither black nor white. It resides in the grays. So does the truth. Therefore, focused attention and study also need to be exerted by those who are truly interested in knowing and understanding the truth. But if there is anything that's still not clear to any of you, after my presentation, we would be happy to answer them during the question and answer period. And if Sir Eli is still around at that time, I'm sure he'll lend us a hand too. I'm happy and thankful to all of you who have joined us today, because this means you are truly interested in knowing and understanding the not so simple truth. Because you see, the burden of the truth regarding the 2022 Philippine elections is, unfortunately, its complexity and technology. And the enemies of the truth are relying on us Filipinos to be too lazy and impatient and perhaps too stupid to understand it. Let us not give them that satisfaction. While this fight is not being fought in the battlefield of conventional warfare or with the traditional weapons of guns and explosives, make no mistake, mga kababayan ko. This is a war. And the weapons we need to clean and sharpen to win this war over the enemies of the truth are our intellect, our industry, our passion, and patience. And for many of us, we also have our faith. And that is a good thing, a powerful thing to be on our side. This isn't about the last man or woman standing. This is about us, the Filipino people, as a whole, standing together, united, and persevering in fighting the good fight. So welcome po. And I shall now proceed with the body of my presentation. So I'm going to go and take you on a chronological tour of the major things that happened during the election. And we'll start before Election Day, which started with a gross lack of process transparency on the part of the COMELEC and Smartmatic. Kasi po ang ginawa nila dito, dapat po yung mga watchdogs, no, na PPCRV and NAMFREL, should have been allowed inside the National Printing Office to observe the ballot printing. Pero hindi po. They were not apprised when that was being done. At nung nalaman nila that it was already ongoing, and they demanded that the COMELEC let them in to observe it, noon lang sila pinapasok. Pero they weren't able to observe everything, no? The other thing, and I think one of the most important things that they missed out on, was the SD card configuration and the protocols agreed upon between Smartmatic and COMELEC in the COMELEC warehouse. So ayun, nandun tayo, we were relying on our watchdogs, to watch for us, but hindi po sila in-apprise, no? They weren't given due notice and they weren't able to observe these crucial processes. Tapos, on Election Day, many of you, these lines are still fresh in your memory, di ba ho? Those unreasonably, and some would say, inhumanely long waiting lines, no? So how is this connected with the systematic rigging of the election, no? It's related to this. On Election Day, there was an unreasonable number of VCM breakdowns, VCM faults and errors, no? Which then promoted
election
and which promoted the propagation of long lines, no? Pero tingnan niyo po dito, no? Look at how ridiculous this is, no? Out of all the VCM problems that day, 80% could be attributed to printing errors, the breakdown and the malfunctioning of the vote counting machines, no? And then 35% of the voting issues can be attributed to the VCMs alone, no? At tingnan niyo po dito yung comparison ng mga cases of VCM malfunction in previous years. In 2016, 801 lang. 2019, tumaas ng konti, 961. Pero last year, 1,800 VCMs broke down, no? In an extreme case, like in Quezon City, for example, no, their VCMs did not run until 3 a.m. the next day. So, ang dami pong tao naghintay doon, no? Nag-overnight po sila doon sa presinto, no? Doon sa voting precinct. And it wasn't until 2:30, 3 a.m. sila nakapagboto. No? So, yun ang mga naging problema.
Marivic,
So now,
there is a request to have it on full screen, your slide.
okay, yeah. Sige. So slide na lang only, no? And then full screen. Okay, is that better? Yes, I appreciate that, Em, because I can't monitor the chats while I'm presenting, so I appreciate that. Okay. So, excuse me. All right. Now, any technology expert worth his or her salt will tell you there are multiple ways and countless possibilities to introduce any information into or tamper with or hack an information technology or IT system. I know because I work closely with and eventually married such an expert. No, he is a top 100 CIO awardee here in the States who worked with the best IT experts in the US and Europe and hired hundreds of IT specialists in India, and altogether produced revolutionary IT solutions for Fortune 100 companies that not only won innovation awards, but were bought by companies like IBM and SAP. In the case of the vote counting machines, sabi niya, they could be tampered with and or information could be fed into them at any of the following times, among others. Number one, during their manufacture and assembly, during their programming of the SD cards that are fed into the VCMs, pretty much like, think of it as like when you insert your SIM card into your cell phone. During the VCM's transportation from somewhere to anywhere, and during the VCM's breakdowns or alleged breakdowns. Oops. How do I get to the next slide here? Okay. So we go to the meat. And I say this is the meat of the presentation. No? As you can see, we trimmed down all the technology terms and functions. Oh, there's someone writing on the screen, Mina, like creating lines, green lines. Could we take care of that?
I think you are on an edit mode.
Am I on edit mode? Oh, excuse me, po, I'm sorry. Really? I don't know that. Parang ano. Okay, I'm just gonna proceed, all right? So, yung automated election system po natin is basically composed of these components, no? Don't think of anything else. Just think of the vote counting machine on the left, no? Ito po, no? Tapos, per the mandated processes, no? that was required for the COMELEC and Smartmatic. All the VCMs, all the 107,000 VCMs are supposed to be connected with the authorized telcos public transmission lines. Yung pong telcos, yun po yung mga 3 telephone companies, no, that were authorized to be connected to provide transmission lines to all the vote counting machines. And no other network is allowed to do that except the telcos. So yung mga vote counting machines po, they feed the election results, if you can see my cursor dito, to the 2 servers of the COMELEC. Dito po sa taas, makikita nyo yan, yung transparency server, no? Ito po yung nagbibigay sa atin ng mga unofficial partial election results, no? And the record of all the transmissions to the transparency server are the reception logs. Tapos po dito sa baba, may pangalawa pong server yung COMELEC, no? Yun po ang tawag natin na central server. Yung pong central server, yun ang official repository of election results. Pero hindi po pinapublish kaagad yun sa public. Yung pinapublish po sa public, by the minute, by the hour, yung pong transparency server. So, yung record po ng mga transmissions sa central server, which again, as I said, is the repository of the official election results, are the transmission logs. So, dito po papasok yung mandamus petition ng TN Trio, no? Kasi po, when the TN Trio asked the Supreme Court to ask the COMELEC to surrender the transmission logs, ang pinakita lang po ng COMELEC ay yung reception logs at pinablish lang po nila iyon sa website nila, no? So nung nakita po ni General Rio na hindi po yun ang hinihingi nila, he called the attention of both they called the TN Trio, called the attention of the Supreme Court and the COMELEC, no? Pero since then po, wala pong kibo ang COMELEC, no? At hindi pa rin nila pinapakita sa atin yung transmission logs. So, let's recap, no? Ito po yung dapat na proseso, no? Na dapat naganap nung election day, no? However, ang nangyari po on election day was this, no? Mina, I'm open to your suggestions on how to take off these. Should I get off, I'm sorry po, should I get off full mode muna? I don't know where all the lines are coming from. Anyway, all right. So ano po ang kaibahan, no? Between this and that. And po front and center, no? Ang nangyari po ay instead na matransmit yung mga election results from all the VCMs po, and I mean all the 107,000 vote counting machines. Instead po na ginamit yung legally mandated telcos, public transmission lines, ang nangyari po ay may isang illegal private network na pumasok sa sistema, no? And in other words, hinak niya yung automated election system natin, no? At yun po, yung illegal private network pong iyon, ang nag-transmit ng alleged election results sa transparency server at saka sa central server, no? And then within the illegal private network po, there were actually just 3 workstations working this, no? For simplicity, at this point, tatawagan natin silang private computer workstation with address A, private address A. Yung pangalawa ay B at yung pangatlo ay C. Ngayon, Bakit malaki yung C? I will explain it here. Ayan. No? Ang nangyari po, kaya malaki po yung computer C dito. Kasi po, most of the election results that were entered in the first hour lang, no? From 7:08 to 8:02 p.m., no? Most of them came from private address C, no? And how did it do this? It did this by cloning hundreds and hundreds of vote counting machines, no? Yung private workstation A and B, meron din silang ginawa. Pero ang pinakamalaking nag-contribute, no, sa pagpapadala ng mga 20 million plus votes during the first hour of transmission, no, on election night came from this, what I call clone maker, no? Clone maker siya. Tapos, dun sa pangalawang, the second hour of transmissions, makikita nyo na bumaba yung votes, no? From 20 million plus, naging 13.2 million votes na lang, no? But, and so on and so forth po yan. Hanggang po sa May 13, 22, the last day of the transmissions at 3:18 p.m. Lahat po ng mga election results ay na-transmit lamang through this illegal private network, no? So, yung napakita ng transparency server po sa atin while that vote counting was going on, yun po ay information that was fed into the system by this illegal private network, no? At papaano nating alam lahat ito, no? We owe it to the hard work of Sir Eli, no? Ayan. Ayun si Sir Eli, ano siya? He's a detective kasi nakita niya lahat, no? Na-discover niya ito by his patient examination of, these are samples of the received VCM transmissions during the first hour after polls closed. At hindi po I will repeat for the nth time, ano po, lahat po ng mga election results transmission ay nanggaling po sa illegal private IP addresses na nandoon sa loob na isang local area network sa loob po ng COMELEC. Paano po natin alam ito? Kasi po, yung mga nakita nating workstation dito, no, they cannot be more than 100 meters away from the servers, no? So, kung ano po yung teritoryo o premises ng transparency server, dapat nandoon din, malapit din na yung location nitong illegal private network. No? And now, paano po nating alam na private IP address ito, no? Na-identify po ni General Rio ang mga ito because of the numbers, no? And I will not venture into explaining why an IT expert knows this, but we rely on his expertise when he says that yung private IP address na 10 point so on and so forth, yun ay private IP address, no? So makita nyo dito, no? Lahat ng ito nanggaling po dun sa 10 point so on and so forth X. Ibig po sabihin nun, they're consisting of several numbers within the 10 point XX address, no? May I request someone to please unmute yourselves
Tapos
because I could hear you talking.
walang sana, walang alam.
Okay. All right. Ngayon, yung pangalawa, yung private workstation or with a private IP addresses, the second one have private IP addresses 192.168.xx. No, ibig sabihin ng XX, there are several numbers that come up after that. Pero pag nag-uumpisa po ng mga numerong ito, alam po na natin na ito po ay private IP address. Kasi po, it doesn't belong to the telco's public transmission lines that should have been used to transmit the election results, no? And then, ito po yung clone maker, no? Yung clone maker ay number 192.168.0.2. Memorize ko na po yan. Dahil po, napakahalaga at napaka-brazen po nitong single IP address na to. Because it was able to clone hundreds of VCMs, and its objective seemed to be to make sure na naipasok nila yung 20 million plus votes during the first hour alone. Okay? Ngayon, matanong natin, bakit importante para sa kanila na maipasok nila yung 20 million plus votes that favored the Marcos Duterte team? No? Well, as Sir Eli has been telling us for some time now, they serve the purpose of shocking and awing all of us into resignation. Natapos na yung boxing, no? Nananalo na si Marcos Duterte. And that we should just give up and just accept the results, no? So that's one thing, no? Psych war po. Pero sa pagre-research ko and sa pagpapaaral ko po ng mga issue na ito, I also came upon a theory, no? Which is this, no? Alam niyo po ba na during the day after the elections, naririnig na po ninyo yung law of large numbers, di ba? Many of us, hindi natin alam yon kasi hindi po tayo natapos sa statistics. We don't have statistics degree, no? And then the apologists for the Marcos Duterte team, including for the COMELEC and Smartmatic and all of these people who ran the elections, they parang binulaga nila tayo, no? Oh, yung constant vote ratio, no, between Leni Robredo and Bongbong Marcos, yung constant 47% vote ratio na yan, can be easily explained by the law of large numbers, no? Pero if you really look at the numbers, no, and I'm trying to enlarge this, yung pong constant vote ratio, nandoon na from the very beginning, nung wala pa pong mga large numbers to talk about, no? So, kaya nga, no, kailangan nilang maipasok yung 20 million plus votes para sa tapos pa lang nung first hour, maiki-claim na nila yon. So, ano po ang ibig sabihin nun, no? They foresaw that the keener observers among us will catch that ludicrous and suspicious constant 47% vote ratio between Bongbong Marcos and Leni Robredo. So prepared na sila with a defense, no? Oh, it's just the law of large numbers, no? Ano po ang ibig sabihin, no, ng law of large numbers? Ang ibig pong sabihin yan ay given a set, no, a trial set of consisting of numbers no, and you conduct an experiment, no, the mean or the average result, no, will most likely pertain to the whole body of numbers, the larger body of numbers. The results will conform to what the large numbers will show us in the end compared to what smaller sample will show us. So, hindi sila pwedeng makapag argue based on the law of large numbers kung wala po yung 20 million plus votes in the first hour. So again, to recap, going back here, ito yung naging function ng clone maker, VCM, in conjunction and teamwork with the workstation A and workstation B, no, to deluge, to flood, no, the election results, delivering the 20 million plus votes that favored Marcos Duterte. Tapos, makita nyo dito, this is a very hardworking clone machine. Bakit po? Kasi hindi lang niya kinlone, no, hundreds of VCMs. Pero kung makita nyo, tingnan nyo yung transmission times. It's almost every second nagpapadala siya. Nagpapadala siya ng election results from clustered precincts, no? Ayan, tingnan nyo. 19, 14, 21, 19, 14, 23, 19, 14, 24. Nako, sunod-sunod, talagang parang machine gun, no? Parang machine gun, no? And it can only do this. How can it do this, no? It can only do this kung alam na niya kung ano ipapasok niya, no? Kung meron na siyang pre-programmed election results, ang gagawin na lang niya ay ipapasok niya, no? Hindi na niya hinintay man yung vote counting machine. Why? Because ang katunayan po dito, the transparency server received voting data even before the precinct VCM transmissions. Sa ibang salita po, hindi pa nga nagpiprint yung VCM sa presinto nyo, alam na ng transparency server kung anong i-feed ninyo sa VCM machine. Paano pong nangyari yon? Nangyari yon dahil alam na po nung private IP address na 192.168.0.2 kung ano ang ipapakain niya doon sa transparency server, no? Okay. Tapos, ano pa bang mga anomalies na obserbahan natin on election day? Aside from the constant vote ratio, at hindi lang po ito between Lenny, no, and Bongbong. It was the same for all the presidential and vice presidential candidates. Tingnan niyo po ito. Ayan, no? Tingnan niyo po. Si Bongbong, hindi po not really varying from 60%, no? Ang highest niya is 63. Si Lenny is between 27 to 29. Si Pacman, more or less within the 5%, no? Tapos si Isko is 4%, si Ping was 2%, no? So, hindi lang po between Lenny and Bongbong ma-obserbahan natin yung constant vote ratio. And we call this a highly improbable and thus dubious statistical result. Other dubious statistics that we observed was there were 113 precincts that showed exactly 1,000 registered voters, and all 1,000 registered voters voted in all the 113 precincts. Napaka-perfect naman po 'yon, di ba? Na eksakto, no? Hindi man lamang yung nag-program sa result nito, medyo nagkulang po ng imagination, hindi man niya iniba ng konti para naman ho hindi masyadong booking na pre-program yung result na to, no? Tapos, dito po sa amin, mga expatriates, no? Several overseas precincts reported exactly 999 actual voters out of 1,000 registered voters, no? So, medyo tamad yung nag-program, no? Kasi yung kwento niya, iisa lang. Hindi niya naiba yung cast of characters, no? Exactly 999 in several precincts ang bumoto among 1,000 registered voters. Tapos, another anomaly ay yung pong sudden downturn ng vote count in the second hour after voting closed. Bakit po natin tinatawag na anomaly ito, no? Kasi po historically, no, normally, yung pong second hour, mas malaki po yung dapat na pumapasok ng mga election results on the second hour. Pero as we saw here, no, sa first hour, 20 million plus votes ang pumasok, tapos naging 13.2. Tapos pababa na po ng pababa yon, up to May 13, 22 at 3:18 p.m. No? So, just hold your thought and then think about these facts for a bit, no? If you ask me, by and for themselves, are each of these things proofs of electoral fraud? Hindi po, not yet, no? So we're going to connect the dot now with other things. Ito po pala ang isang example. It's a documentary proof na yung transparency server ay nakaresibo po ng election result 1 hour, 9 minutes, and 20 seconds before the VCM printed the election result. Papaano pong nangyari yon? No? Papaano pong nangyari yon? Ang ibig sabihin nun, whoever was feeding information to the transparency server through the illegal private network, alam na niya kung ano ang i-reflect ng VCM. So, let's just pause there for a bit. How is that possible? It's only possible if the VCM machine is already fed the same information that the illegal private network was transmitting to the transparency server. So this is one indication of the existence of pre-programming or manufactured votes. No? Dito po, makikita ninyo, no, yung clustered precinct with this ID number, no? They sent they transmitted their election results at the 19th hour, no? 24 minutes, 45 seconds, no? According to the transparency server. Pero yung printed resibo, no? Nung mismong VCM machine, ano ang sinasabi niya? It was transmitted at the 20th hour, 34 minutes, 15 seconds. So meron po tayong hard evidence, no? So yung mga nagsasabing wala po tayong pruweba, ay siguro po hindi po nila alam ito. So just bear this in mind. We have a lot of these printed receipts, no? Na digitalize na po. Kasi po ang problema sa mga resibong ito, over time, no, nagfe-fade po yung ink. So it was so good that someone took photos of them, no? Kaya po natin alam ang anomaly na ito dahil meron po tayong documentary evidence. And in every court case, documentary evidence is always very helpful, Very crucial po yan, no? Okay. Babalik po ako dun sa paborito ko pong IP address number C, itong 192.168.02. Tingnan niyo po yan, no? Tingnan niyo, karamihan po were transmitted by this clone maker IP address. Okay. Ngayon po, ano naman nangyari after election day? No? That nagpa-pile up na po, no, yung mga proofs natin at saka po yung mga anomalies. So I'm just going by the major ones, no? Well, one thing was yung mga election watchdogs po natin, they could not swear an oath to attest to the integrity of the ballots brought to the Diamond Hotel from various precincts for random manual audit. Bakit po? No? Bakit po hindi nila ma-attest, no? Siguro po meron po silang naobserbahan, no? In the condition of the ballots that were transported to Diamond Hotel. And this, by the way, I must admit, hindi ko po na-read yung makapal na report ng NAMFREL, no? Pero meron po silang report on this, you know, and I'm sure more details can be found there. Pero I just wanted to remind us all na sino po yung kinontrata ng COMELEC to transport all election paraphernalia. No? Ang kumpanya po who got the contract for this, and they were paid hundreds of, you know, millions and millions for this contract, no? Was F2 Logistics. Sino po ang may-ari ng F2 Logistics? No? Si Dennis Uy, no? Who is also, and who also happens to be a close friend of Duterte, and also has been seen partying with BBM and his trolls, no, including his wife, no. So when you think about that, plus may interest po si Dennis Uy sa Smartmatic, which is the provider of the automated election system, no. So talk about conflict of interest. Now, I understand that there were many of you in the Philippines, no, who objected to Smartmatic and F2 Logistics being the ones chosen, no, to transport all election paraphernalia and for Smartmatic to provide the AES system for the elections, no. Pero hindi po kayo pinakinggan, no. Ang rason po ng COMELEC ay sila po ang pinakamababang nagbigay ng bid, kaya sila ang nag-win dun sa bid for the contract, no. Pero you know, let's lay that aside. Let's put that at the back of our mind, no? And then let's revisit it later when we try to connect the dots. Another discrepancy na nangyari po at nadiskubre ay yung discrepancy between VCM hash codes, no? Ano pong ibig sabihin nito? Okay, medyo bibigyan natin ng konting explanation, no, kung ano pong ibig sabihin ng source code at saka ng hash code. Pag nag-program po kayo ng software, no, yung software, ibig sabihin nun, it's a set of commands, no, na dinesign ng isang computer programmer. They're nothing more than a set of commands to the vote counting machine. Na, okay, vote counting machine, ha? Pag pumasok ang mga numbers na to, dito mo yan itatali at ganito mo siyang i-report, no? For example, that's one instruction. So saan nakalagay yung instruction na yon? Yung instruction na mga yon ay nakalagay dun sa SD cards, no, ng VCM. Tapos, per yung processes that COMELEC found to follow by law, no, they were required to do an initial system check, no? Kung rinan nila po yung system check na yon, it automatically generated what we call a hash code. Ano po ang hash code, no? Ang hash code is nothing more than the fingerprint that identifies the source code, no? So, ang halaga po ng hash code tells you kung ano po yung set of instructions na nakalagay dun sa vote counting machine dahil ma-identify po niya yung source code. So, kumbaga parang tayo yan, no? You know, ngayon, they say that human beings, no, we're all individually unique and really different from each other based on our fingerprints alone, that no one has exactly the same fingerprint as you do. That's how unique you are. Ganon din po ang software, no? Meron din po siyang unique fingerprint. So ito po, pinakita po ng COMELEC yung hash code. Rinan po niya, nag-run siya ng demo, no? At may lumabas po na hash code at naganap po ito noong February 2022, before the elections. Kaya lang, may nangyari po after that. Actually, a month after that, no? Ayan. Yan po ang nangyari. Nag-present po na naman ng panibago ang COMELEC, no, in front of the public, in front of the election watchdogs, no. Kaya lang, napansin ng NAMFREL na yung hash code na pinakita on March 22, 2022 ng COMELEC ay iba dun sa hash code na pinakita nila just a month earlier. So, ano pong ibig sabihin nun? Na yung source code na nandoon na VCM ay iba na. They are a different set of instructions on how the vote counting machine should behave, no? Pero, you know, as usual, and you're already familiar with this, no? Medyo magaling po yung mga opisyalis natin in explaining away with patay mali siya kung bakit nag-iba yung hash code. Ano po ang sinabi ng COMELEC? Ay, wala yan. Mere typo error lang yan. Sabi nila, di ba? No? Kaya lang, kung totoo po yun, no? Just remember, number one, babalik po tayo dun sa nangyari before the elections, di ba? Sabi natin na ang NAMFREL app PPCRV ay hindi po in-invite ng Smartmatic at ng COMELEC na obserbahin yung SD card configuration because they did it secretly. And the SD card configuration, no, yun po yung dapat pinakita doon kung ano po yung mga instructions na binigay nila dun sa mga vote counting machines natin. Hindi po nila pinakita yon sa atin, no? And they were never publicly shown even after they did that for integrity verification. Tapos, kung mere typo error yan, kasi ang hash code po, generated yan automatically. No? Kumbaga, hindi yan maiimbento ng just anyone. No? At hindi yan po manually typed. No? Kasi po yan, pag pina-under nyo yung machine, yung VCM machine, automatically yan, ipiprint out niya yung hash code niya. No? So, yun, nakita ng NAMFREL yun, na hindi nagtugma yung mga hash code, no? So ibig sabihin may nabago na, okay? Tapos, ang isa pang dapat na alalahanin natin, no, na as from the initial system hash code generation na pinakita sa atin dito ng COMELEC, wala na pong ibang hash code ang pinresenta ng COMELEC sa atin, which they should have done. So iisa lang, nagpakita lang sila ng one demo VCM, yun lang ang pinakita nila. At dun sa kaisa-isang yon, nagkamali pa sila. Nagkamali pa sila by the COMELEC seems to have this predisposition to be hanging themselves by their own words, no, and their own publications. Kasi napansin po ng NAMFREL to mismo po dun sa pinublish ng COMELEC. By the same token po, na nalaman natin na may illegal private network that hacked into the automated election system natin through the raw files that COMELEC itself published in its website. Hindi nila alam, may masipag po tayong General Rio na talagang nagpumilit at tinignan niya lahat ng mga numbers na ito at napansin niya yung mga anomalies. Okay. Tapos, in my opinion, this is my conclusion here, no, about this hash code discrepancy. Absent transparency in system hash code generation and verification, and discrepancy between hash codes that were shown no one else but by COMELEC, the system integrity verification process was a total failure and cannot be trusted because it allowed for the logical likelihood that information program was fed into the VCMs through SD cards on election day that were tampered or edited. No? Okay. Tapos meron pa pong nangyari after the election. On May 13, 2022, no, right after yung mga last transmissions na, no, yung sinabi natin, anong oras ba yung sinabi natin, yung 3:18 p.m., no? All of a sudden, lahat ng data sa transparency server ay na-delete, nawala. No? And why is this an anomaly? This is an anomaly po. Kasi historically, hindi ini-erase po ang data ng transparency server until the last day for filing election protest. Pero dito, May 13 pa lang, right after the transmission of the last few election results, biglang nawala po ang data ng transparency server. No? Yon ang event number 1 on that day, on May 13, no? May pangalawang event pa. Ito. Yung lahat ng mga journalists who were observing the election process, meron po silang kwarto doon, no, doon sa transparency server premises. Na ang nangyari po ito yata doon sa UST, UST campus, no? Kasi nandoon po yung transparency server, no? So nung natapos na yung bilangan, no? Ito po ang nakakapagtaka. Yung PPCRV demanded that all the journalists and reporters surrender all their laptops to them, no? Tapos po, nung binalik po ng PPCRV yung mga laptops sa mga journalists natin, na-discovery po ng mga reporters na dinilit po yung transparency server data na nandoon po na naka-record sana doon sa mga laptops nila. After PPCRV returned their laptops to them. So, Ako po, no? Wala po ako doon, pero ang tanong ko ay, unang-una, sino ba si PPCRV para magdemanda sa mga journalists to surrender their laptops to them? No? Because that is confiscation of private property without due process. No? And the deletion, whoever deleted it, and presumably it was PPCRV and or COMELEC acting together who deleted the data that were in the laptops of our reporters and journalists, no? That is stealing property from which is information, no? Which were contained in the laptops of the journalists. So, if you try to recall, no, again, on May 10, after Election Day, sino po ba yung pinakauna na nag-accept nung law of large numbers? Natatandaan nyo? Sino po yung unang nag-accept nun? Na sinasabihan tayo, ay talagang talo tayo kasi law of large numbers yan. Walang cheating dyan, yung 47%, wala yan. Kasi law of large numbers. Sino po ang nagsalita ng ganoon sa atin? Hindi po ba ang PPCRV? So nung narinig ko po yon on May 10, sabi ko, there's something wrong here. Why is PPCRV, who's supposed to be our watchdog, the one defending the COMELEC, which it should be watching over? Right? And then, pounded by this event, hindi po ba nakakapagtaka yan? Na ginawa ng PPCRV yan? Kinonfiscate nila yung mga laptops ng reporters, tapos nung binalik nila sa mga reporters, nawala yung voting data. Okay. All right. So, we're towards the end, actually, no? Dahil I really tried to simplify, and I went through all the evidence, and what I'm presenting to you ay mga major lang. Hindi ko na nga po minention yung mga reports of burning of ballots, di ba? The dumping of the ballots, etc. And the violence and all the other anomalies here and there. No, I just concentrated on the major. If you're gonna ask me, no, what I think are the most important proofs, ito po yon, no? We have no less than 3 big direct proofs of electoral fraud. Ang pinaka-importante po dyan, at klarong-klaro po yan, at hindi na po madi-deny ng anyone, not even COMELEC. Kaya po, silent ang COMELEC eh, no? Silent ang COMELEC. Ay yung use of their use of an illegal private network to transmit election results. Why? Because this was not part of the end-to-end path transmission that they presented to the public that they were going to follow. And that none of the election results were transmitted at all through the telcos public transmission lines, which were the only authorized lines to send election results to the COMELEC servers.
Yikes.
Yes. So, yun po, up to now, wag na po kayong magtaka bakit silent po ang COMELEC. Kasi wala po silang masasabi dito. Kasi po, yung source ng evidence natin, sila rin yun. Sila rin. Puntahan niyo yung website ng COMELEC. Yung raw files nila, yun yung pruweba natin against them. Okay? Ngayon, siguro, ang iba sa inyo, nabasa niyo yung article ni Lito Averia sa Manila Times, no? Explaining away why COMELEC had to use a private network, no? I will not go anymore into the details of what Lito Averia said. Why? Because number one, he doesn't speak for the COMELEC. And number two, he only helped our case. Why? Because by him defending COMELEC's use of an illegal private network, they are by that act alone admitting to the existence, to the actual use of an illegal private network. So admission po yun. And that's another proof, no? That's another proof we can bring to the court, no? Sila pong mismo, di ba sabi nga nila, ang isda ay nahuhuli through its tongue, no? At isipin po ninyo yon, no? Di ba po si Mr. Averia ang chairman ng NAMFREL? Another supposed watchdog who's supposed to be protecting our interests as voters? Bakit po nagmamadali silang mag-defend, offering defense arguments for the COMELEC? Pag-isipin po natin yun. Yung mga mismong watchdogs natin, in the end, parang hindi na watchdogs for us. Watchdogs na po sila for the COMELEC, no? Para i-accept na lang natin yung resulta ng election, no? Okay. Pangalawa pong direct evidence. Yung realistically impossible transmission of 20 million plus votes during the first hour after voting closed. Bakit po natin sinasabing realistically impossible po yan? Pabalikan natin yung slide na yon kasi importante po yan, no? Okay. The first transmission was effected at 7 o'clock, 8 minutes, 50 seconds. However, the legally mandated procedures after voting closed would have required at least 19 minutes to process. At part po ng process na yon ay yung pagpiprint po ng mga kopya ng election results para sa lahat ng mga party list candidate representatives, you know, yung mga other candidate representatives, pati po yung mga representatives ng mga watchdogs. So yung well, I'm laughing here kasi we Filipinos, we don't enjoy the reputation of being on time, di ba? Kaya nga ang joke po ay Filipino time, di ba? Parati po tayong late. Now, assuming you remove that cultural kind of idiosyncrasy, as I would call it, no? Na on the dot, pag natapos po yung voting at 7 o'clock, wala na, talagang nagmadali na sila at ginawa na nila lahat, no? All of the procedures that they have to accomplish right after the polls close, no? The earliest time they could do that, no, was 19 minutes to transmit the election results. Pero anong nangyari, no? Let's go back here. The 20 million plus votes started entering the transparency server at 7:08, not 7:19. So that alone is an indication of the of something had hacked. Something had hacked our automated election system. No? Tapos, so connected din po yon yung logical and logistical impossibility of the transparency server receiving the election returns before the precinct voting counting machines transmissions, no? Papaanong alam ng transparency server kung ano yung itra-transmit ng VCM before the VCM even transmitted that information, no? So that is another indication of pre-programming or manufactured votes fed into the transparency server. No? Ano po yung circumstantial evidence natin, no? Number one po, at ito ang pinaka-importante ay yung continued silence ng COMELEC and failure to present the central server's transmission logs in the Mandamos case. Bakit po ayaw ipresenta sa atin ng COMELEC, no? Yung transmission logs. Kasi po, yung transmission logs will tell us kung nagtugma yung transmission time, no, sa central server at saka sa transparency server. At it will also tell us, no, kung kailan, sino at ano ang transmission medium na ginamit to transmit those results, no? Now, remember na sinabi natin, ni isang vote counting machine ay nakapag-send ng election results through the telcos public lines. Ni isa sa kanila, wala pong dumaan dun sa authorized public transmission line. Lahat pong iyon, lahat po ng mga boto natin, no, na almost 60 million votes, no, ay nagdaan po dun sa illegal private server. So, makakatulong po sa atin na malaman natin kung ano po yung nandoon sa record ng central server, which is the repository of the official election results, no? Bakit silent ang COMELEC? Bakit ayaw ipakita, no? Kasi po at this point po, kung i-review natin ang lahat ng anomalya na nilista po natin, ay klarong-klaro po, or they would suggest na complicit po ang COMELEC natin sa nangyari na electoral fraud. So let's chew on that a little bit, no? Our own COMELEC could have been complicit in the achievement of the electoral fraud. Because only the COMELEC, number one, could authorize or give access to an illegal private network to access the transparency server, no? Tapos, if you remember, we discussed na po yung discrepancy ng hash codes, no? At sino po ang source ng proof natin diyan is no one else again but the COMELEC, no? Matatawa ka, nakakatawang nakakaiyak, ano po. Tapos, remember, add to that yung gross lack of transparency in ballot printing and SD card configuration. Very important po yung SD card configuration, ano po? Kasi po yun yung yun yung mga instructions na pinasok sa VCM machines, no? Vote counting machines. And then add to that, as you might recall, yung historically aberrant speedy deletion of transparency server data at saka yung unilateral deletion, no, without the consent of the journalists of the TS data from their laptops, no? And then you add to that 80% of the problems on election day regarding the VCMs was their malfunctioning, no? Now, recall I said at the beginning of this presentation, ano, na you can hack a system in multiple ways. When you think about the time spent so-called repairing the defective VCM, that that was an opportunity to introduce information. Now, even if you say talagang totoong naging defective, sira, no? Hindi maganda yung quality ng machine na pinrovide ng Smartmatic, no? Or yung F2 Logistics, no? But still, during the time of its breakdown and its repair was a very rich time to introduce new information. Now, you can say, may concrete proof po ba tayo doon? Doon sa mismong pag-i-enter ng new information nung nag-breakdown ng VCM, wala pa yun, no? However, no, just put that at the back of your mind, and again, connect all of these dots. And what do you find? No? You find a narrative that makes sense. I won't mention the other things dito for, to just speed up our conclusion here. Pero ako po kasi, naging litigation lawyer po ako dyan sa Pilipinas. Ano? And one of the things that a litigation lawyer does to be successful is to present a cogent, reasonable narrative that connects all the strings and different parts of a story. Now, without that narrative, the whole thing doesn't make sense. No? Ito po, yung mga different elements of that narrative, nandito na po at nanggaling mismo sa COMELEC yung different elements of this narrative. They tried to explain it away, no? Pero ito po ang job ng judge, no? The judge's job is to exercise his due and reasonable discretion based upon the evidence to decide whether in fact na yung alleged typo error defense of COMELEC, when weighed against all of this evidence that are listed in front of us now, all of them cannot be denied, right? They're all publicly known. No? What do you think a judge, a reasonable, honest, and just judge would decide? I think a reasonable judge would decide that all of these proofs and evidence put together would amount to more than a preponderance of evidence that there was in fact systematic rigging of the 2022 Philippine elections. And another thing that a lawyer does, especially when you're either prosecuting or defending someone in a criminal case, is you ask yourself, if I were to commit this crime, what do I need to accomplish that? Well, mga kababayan ko, it's right in front of you. These are all the elements of the crime that you need to pursue in order to be successful in implementing it. No? Kaya nga po, some of you have seen this na, no? Medyo tumawa na muna tayo kasi medyo mabigat. No? Mabigat yung problema natin, so tawa na muna tayo. No? So this is my attempt at levity in putting together, connecting all the dots. No? Kung gusto mong, if you want to cook the 2022 Philippine elections, paano mong lulutuin yan? So bear with me, because I had a lot of fun putting this together. Number one, make your friends, cronies, and puppets the cooks and sous chefs. No? Number two, prevent election watchdogs from watching the cooking process, especially the SD card configuration and system code generation. Number three, marinate election process in poison sauce. Yung poison po yun, hindi po yun French, no? Kasi sa French, poisson. It's similar to the way they spell poison. Pero yung poison, ang ibig sabihin nun is that, no? Well, in many ways, may isdang mabaho na namatay na that there's a smelly fish, something fishy here, in other words, no? Tapos po, after you marinate the election process in poison sauce, salt pre-programmed election results with vote ratio favorable to Marcos Duterte in SD cards. Sprinkle with pre-programmed statistical improbabilities also favorable to Marcos Duterte. Tapos, pre-cook and add secret private network to hack into your automated election system and transmit pre-programmed election results to the two COMELEC servers. Tapos, you use the VCM breakdowns to distract from VCM tampering and or discourage voting. Saturate the transparency server with shock and awe 20 million plus votes during first hour after voting to kill your rival's hope and justify the law of large numbers defense. Tapos, skim out incriminating transparency server data and transmission logs. No? Kasi bakit natin one reason na sinasabi natin incriminating yung TS data, not only because they show that the transmissions were done through an illegal private network, pero in a subsequent presentation by the COMELEC, they tried to show iba na yung number dun sa second hour. Sa presentation nilang yon. No, contrary to what the transparency server showed us on election night, na yung peak of the votes were sent in the first hour, not the second hour. Pero in a subsequent presentation of COMELEC, they tried to change it around. They tried to claim that the peak of the transmissions happened during the second hour. And why would they want to say that? Why? Kasi po, if you recall, di ba, diniscuss na po natin na normally, historically, the norm is, if everything is happening the way they should be, no, that the biggest votes should have come in on the second hour. So they tried to change their story. So that, again, is another instance of COMELEC attempting to change its story and not getting its narrative straight. No? Tapos, what else do you do, no, to finish cooking? You turn up the heat by bribing, intimidating, harassing, and or threatening all relevant actors to cooperate with and accept the election result. Hindi ba nagtataka tayo? Bakit lahat ng dapat na nagdidepensa sa right natin to democracy, our right to our votes, lahat ay silent. Lahat. Mainstream journalists, mainstream media, the COMELEC, the Supreme Court, no? The executives, even our opposition leaders are silent. Yan po ang tanong ng taong bayan. No? Pero that's not to say na meron na pong nag-join sa atin. Like yung Makabayan Bloc have already pledged to help Colonel Leonardo Odonio in his impeachment action against COMELEC commissioners. No? At meron na rin pong isa-isa. Tulad po ninyo, no? Your very presence with us tonight evinces your willingness to discover and understand the truth and to be on the side of the truth. No? That's why, the way you finish this off is with a conspiracy of silence, no? Telling us, accept na, natalo tayo. Yan talaga, ganyan ang buhay. Pero totoo ba? With all of the evidence that we presented, no? Ito, you're saying now evidence of electoral fraud, no? And then, after that, if I were the cook of this Lutong Macau, I will serve it cold. Very, very cold. No? Wala pong pagmamahal yan sa sangkatauhang Pilipino. No? Pero kung sino man silang nagluto nito, ay nag-enjoy na po. No? At hindi lang yon, nagmamadali na po silang mag-prepare for the next elections. No? Reformation of our electoral system. So I will conclude with this. No? Summary. Number one, there is more than a preponderance of evidence of systematic rigging of the 2022 Philippine elections through the use of information technology that favored a Marcos Duterte win. That's a fact. And therefore, based on that fact, the Marcos Duterte government is illegitimate. And therefore, the Filipino people must support the TN Trio's mandamus petition in the Supreme Court to compel the COMELEC to surrender the transmission logs that would further prove the electoral fraud. If you're gonna ask me, hindi na po natin kailangan yon, no? Pero it is our right under the law to demand transparency from COMELEC and to present a public record that we, the Filipino people, own by right. And so they should present it, even if it indicts them. And therefore, the Filipino people must also support the impeachment action of Colonel Leonardo Odonio against COMELEC commissioners for their apparent complicity in this electoral fraud. And in the end, mga kababayan ko, we, the Filipino people, in the face of a so-called democratic government that is fake and illegitimate, in the face of silent government officers and branches of government who are in a conspiracy of silence against us, we, the Filipino people, who are the source and origin of all government powers, must reclaim that power from this illegitimate Marcos Duterte government. Yun lang po. Maraming salamat po for listening.